106.1 Rock Radio. I'm Steve Berry and I am a man of a certain age. And as a boy, I used to watch the BBC television news and see the very stern face of Leonid Brezhnev. It'd be the old May Day parade. And there seemed, what to me, as a kid, an endless procession of Soviet military might. Now, that might be the sort of thing that would make a young lad fret. However, thank goodness we had things like this fantastic Nimrod to keep us safe from the Red Peril. Hey, Vince.
Spot on, Steve. As I mentioned before, this aeroplane was built back in the 60s when the Cold War was a real threat. And one of the major threats was the Russian submarines, because, of course, they're very difficult to see. They're under the water. And one of the main jobs of this aeroplane was to find those submarines and, if necessary, eliminate them. And it did it using sonar buoys. It dropped little buoys out of the... Not little buoys in the form of human beings, of course, I hasten to add. It drops sonar buoys, and these are little devices that fall down at the base of the aeroplane into the sea. They float in the surface of the sea, and they listen out for enemy submarines, and they transmit back to the Nimrod, which is circling above, any information they find. The guys on the aeroplane will analyse this, decide if there's a threat, and if there is, they'll plan an action and attack on the submarine.
What's the operational range of a Nimrod, Vince?
Well, it could stay in the air for about 17 hours. And it could cruise at up to 470 knots. So in theory, it was pretty big. It could certainly cross the Atlantic, no problem.
Is that proboscis on the exterior of the aircraft, was that for refuelling?
It was. That was added at the time of the Falklands War. Now, the 17 hours duration was without the use of the in-flight refuelling. That was added later. So with the in-flight refuelling, that was considerably extended. We don't know exactly how long, because a lot of this aeroplane is still classified, and that's one of the things we don't know, is the absolute length of a sortie. But it was well over 17 hours, because we know that was the minimum.
So really, there are effectively three working areas. There's the flying bit at the front, then there's the data analysis bit in the middle, and the lads back here would have been doing the physical dropping of sonar buoys, yeah?
That is absolutely correct. The sort of ordnance area will be back here. And the main job of the aeroplane happened in the middle, as you say, with the analysis and the planning of any attack. And the guys at the front would be flying the aeroplane to where it needed to be.
There's a kitchen.
There is, because if you're in the air for 17 hours, you need to have your food, your nosh. You need to have supplies brought in. When they left Kinloss, that would be fully stocked with food. If they were operating abroad, as they often were with this aeroplane, it operated a lot in the Middle East as well, of course, they would have a budget to go out and buy food locally and keep the kitchen well stocked. And I believe sometimes they live quite well.
Was there a lot of that, Vince, when obviously as a guide, one of the guides here at Manchester Airport in the viewing area with the Concorde and the Nimrod as we have here, was there a lot of, can you tell us about, no, and could you, no, did it get a bit like it's all this classified stuff?
No, there isn't too much of that, Steve, I'm happy to say, because the stuff that's classified is what specific missions did the aeroplane carry out, that sort of thing. Everything that's on the aeroplane that we can show the public, we can talk about. When the aeroplane was decommissioned by the RAF, there are certain parts of equipment that they did take off. Not very much, almost all of it's still here, but the highly classified stuff was taken out because it's either secret or it can be used elsewhere. What's here, which is pretty much all of it that's left, we can talk about, no problem at all.
But it wasn't all blowing up submarines, was it, the job of the Nimrod? It was also, it also went on missions of mercy when needs be.
Absolutely, it did, yes. One of its major things, and you may well have seen Nimrods on the news doing this, was rescuing people who are lost at sea or in difficulty at sea. If you remember the Fastnet race of a few years ago, when there were unexpected gales and a lot of yachtsmen in the race ended up in difficulties in the water, Nimrods went out, and of course they can't land because they're a long way from land, but what they can do is they can drop life rafts, they can drop supplies, and they can vector the helicopters and the lifeboats in to rescue the people who are in the water, and Nimrods did an awful lot of that.